So good morning, Malc. Here's my
Hey,
coffee.
John. Yeah, I got mine too.
So the question this morning is, what should we be preaching in lockdown in these difficult times? And of course, we've got no wish to kind of dictate to people, but a couple of things sort of stimulated me to think about this. First, I come across a number of pastors simply asking the question, just feeling a bit unsure, especially as it looks as if we're in for another, virus is on the march. It looks as if we're in for another heavy dose of lockdown. What can I be preaching to the people in that? That's the first thing. And the second thing that stimulated me, I've just been looking through Daniel Defoe's Journal of the Plague Year in London in 1665, and there's this quote about some of the sermons preached then. It says this: "I cannot acquit those ministers that in their sermons sank rather than lifted the hearts of the hearers. God's whole gospel is full of declarations of God's mercy and his readiness to receive penitence and forgive. But we had some good men, and that of all persuasions, who spoke nothing but dismal things, terrifying the people, not guiding them, at least not enough to cry to heaven for mercy." So, he kind of stimulated me to say, well, what should we be preaching in this? So, and the news, of course, is full of depressing stuff. Surely we should try and lift folk. But anyway, what would you say?
Yeah.
What would you say? What should pastors be preaching?
Well, I agree with a lot of that. We can't always be banging on about suffering and COVID. Yes, it's real, but it's not the whole story. The general work of a preacher is to teach as much of the Bible as he can anyway. And that has a natural balance to it anyway, to a large extent anyway, because it's God's word. Obviously, we don't ignore the issues that are on people's minds and just stand, but I think we've got to recognize things like teach the providence of God. The Psalms are amazing in that respect. They're full of reminders that God is sovereign over the circumstances of life. Things like that, and also preach on the fear nots. I mean, there's lots about fear in the Bible because it's a very realistic book. Yeah. The Puritans were really good on providence. I've been looking at quite a bit of the Puritan stuff again lately. And the mystery of providence, and also Thomas Boston's book, The Crook in the Lot, is really interesting because it teaches a realistic worldview. It says you'll never have perfection in this life. There's always going to be a crook in the lot, a twist, and we can sort of learn from those lessons from the past, can't we?
Indeed, we can. Okay, so providence, so things like life of Joseph, story of Esther. And things about assurance, Romans 8, John 10, no one can snatch them from my hand. Those kinds of things, chiming in with your fear nots, which are very, very good. Yeah.
Jesus' own discourses as well are very much about people under pressure, his little flock in a hostile world and so on. And the fact that God's love surrounds them in whatever circumstances they are, circumstances never alter the promises of God, do they?
Excellent. That's good. And people need to be reminded of that. And I was thinking myself that as perhaps it looks as if we're going to be in for another, severe time of lockdown, or at least increasingly stringent lockdown, a few sermons perhaps on patience and its fruits. Lovely things to think about God's patience with us, but obviously, for us to be patient under his providence. Also, perhaps someone was saying to me again, Romans 14 and 15. The strong helping the weak, and some of us are weak amongst this.
Practical stuff. I think we need to remind Christians that we're called to the kingdom for such a time as this as well. This is our time. It's not a time for us to cave in. It's a time for us to, as you said at the beginning, to lift up our heads and say, well, what do you want us to do, Lord? How can we be a positive, a brighter light than generally people are seeing in the world around them,
That's right. And I suppose a pastor's job is to kind of lift them and to, you know, to help them lift their heads. So there we are. We'll stop there. But those are some of the ideas from some of the old guys on what to preach during lockdown.
Yeah, but are we the old guys you're talking about?
I think so, yes.
All right. Okay. Bye for now then.
God bless.